So, hi everyone. I'm Julia Filson. I'm the Director of Advancement here at Chamber Music America. I love doing these sessions because I get to meet more members and hear from you directly. It's very, very, very fun. So, thank you for being here today, taking the time out of your busy schedules for sure. So, we have basically more of a casual conversation today where Reba is going to tell us about, present some ideas to you and talk about herself and her experiences. And then we'll do a Q&A. And, the attendance varies, as we move forward. So we'll let you know how we want to do the Q&A when things um, start getting, when we start getting more people. But feel free to type in the chat, introduce yourself in the chat. Any comments or questions, throw them in the chat. This is meant to be conversational and informative for everyone. So thank you. Um, so I'm really excited that Reba is here. Uh, I lived in Chicago for a while, and she was just incredibly well known as this amazing professional. And she's now the general manager of Third Coast Percussion, which she started in 2023. She earned some recognition during COVID-19 as the 2022 Top Professional of the Year by Musical America. And she was also named to New City's 2023 Music 45 list of influential music professionals in Chicago. Reba has worked with several organizations, including the University of Chicago, Ensemble Damiente, the Ear Taxi Festival, and the Grant Park Music Festival. She holds degrees in bassoon performance from Eastman and Cleveland, CIM. And she performed with Civic Orchestra of Chicago before shifting to arts administration. These are just a few of the wonderful things that Reba has done, and it's been great to see her grow organization after organization. And so we're excited to hear about your story with Third Coast Percussion, Reba. So thank you for being here today and take it away.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm really pleased to be here. It's such an honor. Big fan of Chamber Music America and all the programs that you do. And I was just telling Julia how excited we are that the Chamber Music America conference is headed to Chicago next. We can't wait. Um, as Julia mentioned, have a background in music performance. I thought I was going to take the route of, you know, becoming an orchestral musician or perhaps a chamber musician, but something inside of me was stirring and wanted something different. So I transitioned into the arts administration path that I'm on currently around the time that I moved to Chicago in 2004. I like to say that Third Coast Percussion and myself have a similar journey because they also started in 2005, 20 years ago. Actually, the anniversary of their first concert ever is next Wednesday. So we're celebrating that right now. And I'm also in my 20th year of working in the arts administration field. So we're about the same age professionally, which is kind of cool. Um, I met Robert and David from Third Coast Percussion because they were also in the Civic Orchestra. And there was a program that Civic put together called Music Corps. And it basically encouraged civic musicians to put together their own chamber ensembles and go out into the community and do performances, different community centers, schools, hospitals, that sort of thing. And because the two of them from Civic, Rob and Dave, had studied with Michael Burritt, who is a proponent of percussion chamber music. They really wanted to form a chamber ensemble and play the music that they had learned at Northwestern for wider audiences. So this was like right up their alley. So they formed the group then. And then at the same time, I transitioned into my arts admin career. I joined the staff of the Grant Park Music Festival, worked there for a couple of years, worked for the Elgin Symphony for a while. And then for 7 years, I worked for U Chicago Presents, which is a wonderful chamber music presenter here in Chicago. that's where I sort of got to know and love the chamber music field. I thought I wanted to work with orchestras, but then I thought, wow, this is really nice, this intimate environment where really dedicated audience comes over and over again to hear like some really spectacular music that isn't as widely known. And there was also a very strong emphasis on new music, contemporary music, music of living composers, and that really spoke to me. The composition staff at University of Chicago is exquisite. At the time when I first started there, Shulmate Ron was there. Augusta Reed Thomas joined the staff right when I was leaving. So just being surrounded by incredible living composers and having a full series called Contempo that was dedicated to presenting new music, new chamber music, and commissioning even some new music for chamber ensembles and having Eighth Blackbird and Pacifica Quartet in residence. That was so inspiring to me. And at the time, I never imagined that I'd ever have a full-time job just working in contemporary music. That seemed really extreme and like something that wasn't even possible. But around that time, a lot of ensembles in Chicago were forming, Third Coast Percussion being one of them, Spectral Quartet, Fifth House Ensemble. There was just such a hotbed of activity where people who were about my age were kind of like deciding what they wanted to do, what was exciting for them, what pathway did they want their career to take. And a lot of new ensembles were just cropping up all over the place. Very exciting. A lot of them you may know the names of and be familiar with. And Third Coast Percussion, no exception. They were also on that trajectory, building themselves, being the musicians and the entrepreneurs. And so I noticed all of that. I supported all of that, went to a lot of the concerts that were happening around the city. And around 2009, Third Coast Percussion decided that they wanted to incorporate as a nonprofit so they could start raising money for new commissions, support um, their living and make actually perhaps a salary from doing what they were doing. And I was asked by the ensemble if I would join their first board of directors. So I was happy to do that. I just signed the paperwork and attended the first board meetings and tried to use my position from the perspective of an arts administrator and somebody who presented chamber musicians to help them grow and understand like what their place was in the marketplace, how they could be attractive to people who might want to present them, that kind of thing. That was the perspective I was able to provide at the time. And so I served on their board of directors for a couple of years. But then I started my family. I have three children. So my career kind of took a different turn, and I needed to sort of compartmentalize my life a little bit more. I actually left my full-time position at U Chicago so that I could focus on my family life a little bit more. I resigned from the Third Coast board at the time because I just didn't have the free time that I used to. But I continued to work in arts admin. I cobbled together my own career by just putting myself out there and asking the connections that I had if they needed help with any projects that I could do on a freelance basis. And I ended up working for a wide variety of organizations, not just in music, but also in theater. There's a huge storefront theater scene here in Chicago, and I actually got to work with one company in particular and do actually their marketing, which was really fascinating. But I learned so much from that. I worked with Ensemble Dal Niente as a part-time executive director for a little while. And then I helped put together the very first Ear Taxi Festival of Contemporary Music, something that is going into its fourth iteration this fall here in Chicago. But when I worked on it in 2016, it was brand new. Augusta Reed Thomas had an idea, and I helped her execute it using all of the experience I had running a chamber music series and doing little festivals for U Chicago. So that was really exciting. And of course, Third Coast Percussion played on that festival. I followed them along the whole way, going to all their events. It was fun to finally present them somewhere on Ear Taxi. And then in 2019, I decided I was ready to go back to full-time work and lo and behold, Third Coast Percussion had a position open, a full-time position. So about 10 years into their trajectory, the four ensemble members had done all of the administrative work themselves, from executive director to development director, finance, tech director. Like those were all of the different roles that they were playing, and they felt like they were overtaxed. Besides being the performers, also taking on all of those different roles for a nonprofit. That's no joke. Takes a lot of work and time. And if they would go on tour, which they were starting to do more and more, they had to put a pause on literally everything they were working on administratively. So if a grant needed to be written, Rob would be staying up until 2 a.m. in his hotel room writing the grant furiously, or the board meeting needed to get postponed another month or two before they could actually like get back together with the board. Like things were kind of stalling out. So they hired their very first external position, so somebody who wasn't a part of the ensemble, in about 2013. The position was managing director. Liz Pesnell, who is still actively involved with our organization in a lot of different ways, she joined the team just part-time as to kind of help keep things moving along, ensure that things weren't stalling out while they were on tour. And then she just demonstrated a capacity to do so much more than just the tasky, like administrative stuff that they asked her to do. So within the first year, she was promoted to a full-time role. One thing that the ensemble does that's very different from a lot of chamber ensembles is that all of the booking for the touring that they do is done in-house. And Liz had a background in booking from other positions she had held. And David Skidmore, the ensemble's executive director, up until that point had been doing all of the booking himself. So it came time for him to get some support, and she was there to offer that support. And as her position evolved and grew, she took on a greater role in that. So when I came along, when she left for a new job, that is and was one of the biggest parts of the position. Is to this day I'm working on booking, having conversations with organizations all over the country and all over the world promoting Third Coast Percussion, and getting them booked on and on the road. It's a huge part of what they do. Earned income is like, up until this year, it was the largest part of the budget for income. Now, fundraising is starting to follow in suit, and it's gotten a little more balanced. But for a really long time, touring was the bread and butter of Third Coast Percussion. And so having not had any experience booking an ensemble, was able to go back to my time at U Chicago, think about what it was like to work with agents and managers, and kind of tap into that from the other perspective. And I used all of that experience to like say, okay, I think I can do it the opposite way, and I can represent Third Coast Percussion, and see how well I can do at convincing concert series to book them. And that's still something I'm working on to this day. It's very challenging and exciting, something I just didn't ever see myself necessarily doing, but it's been incredible because I get to promote all of the exciting work that Third Coast Percussion does. We're always commissioning new music, building new projects, and that's something that I really get inspired by every single day. So I get to spread that excitement to others and hope that they catch it, and that we can continue to build something really exciting. Um, yeah, my goodness, I am really just yammering on. But this is how I got to where I am right now. The ensemble continues to grow. You may already know this, but they have won a Grammy. Big deal for them. Was a huge game changer. And we release new music, new albums constantly. They've been recognized for their work, in this recording industry with many, many Grammy nominations. It's exciting. There's always something newsworthy and exciting going on there that I get to talk about and promote. And of course, when I first started, it was 2019, so quite soon after the COVID wave hit, and we had to quickly reimagine a lot of what TCP does and is, because like I said before, touring is such a big part of it. But it was so inspiring to be part of the team and see the ensemble think about ways to adapt and still deliver what they love to do, which was sharing music with audiences just in an online format. So I'm really proud of what we were able to do in that period. And ever since we've been able to kind of like recover and pick up where we left off and keep growing. So yes, that is where we are at this time. Hopefully, I covered a lot of what you were hoping I would say and share, but there's a lot more that I can. So let me
Yeah, I
direction
was
if you don't.
wondering. Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about two things. David Skidmore is the executive director, and I was wondering what that relationship is like between the two of you, how that, and leading into this question of what is your structure? Um, yeah, so if you don't mind.
Sure. Um, so the four ensemble members still retain the original administrative titles that they had in the very beginning of when they incorporated as a nonprofit. So David Skidmore is the executive director, and his role is really to think big and long term for there is no artistic director. I think I should say that too. The four ensemble members equally share that responsibility and role. And one thing that David always says is that it's a little bit slower. It's harder because it's very democratic the way that they make artistic decisions. There's not one person saying we're going to pursue this or that. Everybody has to fully agree. And they are really nice about including the staff. So there's several of us on the staff. I'll get to the full team structure in a moment, but we all get to be part of that artistic planning process, listen to what's exciting for them, like make recommendations on things that we're seeing out in the world through our various positions and helping to guide that. But it's very much a all four of them have to agree if they're going to pursue something. But once they do agree and the whole organization's on board, David kind of takes it off and running to the next level. So he'll work on like making the connection with a guest artist or a collaborator or a composer that we're interested in working with. And he'll do that artistic kind of like introduction and try to get things moving along. And he also, works closely with our board of directors. As a nonprofit, of course, we have a board. Right now, it's about 18 people. And over the years, he's played a really big role in, maintaining the board, leading board meetings, that sort of thing. And it's very nice to have an artist who is that invested in, the board really enjoys working with him in that way. And then Peter, our finance director, the reason he has that title is because he opened the first bank account that Third Coast ever had, and he does all of the bookkeeping and all of the budgeting. We have a wonderful finance committee from comprised of board members that advise him in all the financial matters, and he does a really great job managing all of that. And then Robert Dillon is our development director, and he started off doing everything related to fundraising. These days, he's much more involved with major gifts, like stewarding larger gifts from bigger donors. And he has support from a development manager, Rebecca McDaniel, who's a part-time employee. And she has taken on all of the grant writing and also managing our Chicago Circle, which is sort of a new initiative that we have here. Where we're gathering group of donors from Chicago area who want to support our Chicago concert series and can join in the circle at any giving level. So she manages that group of donors as well. Sean Connors is our tech director. So he does all of the operational stuff related to touring, like creating program writers, booking travel, liaising with presenters about all of the details from when are we going to arrive to what do we need on the stage, all of those details. As you can imagine, a percussion quartet has to be logistics forward. And that's something that he kind of takes on for us. And over the years, his position also got to be a little too much to handle by one person because we also have amassed a giant collection of instruments. We have a rehearsals and studio space here in Chicago that now has spilled into a storage facility as well because we just have too much stuff. But maintaining all of those instruments and all of the gear that we own has become a huge project. So we have a production manager who is a full-time employee at Third Coast who supports Sean. His name is Colin Campbell. He manages all the instruments, sets up and tears down, setups, packs for tour, unpacks from tour. He's also an incredible audio engineer. So he's done some producing and engineering on some of our albums as well. So he's phenomenal. But that is indeed a full-time job for him. And then who did I leave out? Sean, Rob, Peter. I think I got them all. Rebecca, Colin. And then recently we've hired on a marketing consultant because something that's very important to Third Coast Percussion and something that I think has enabled them to achieve the longevity and the recognition that they have is that they take promotion very seriously. We invest, a larger percentage of our budget than I think some ensembles do to marketing, publicity. We refresh our photos very frequently. We have invested in a really nice website, that kind of stuff, but it's a lot to manage. And rather than the ensemble managing it and then the staff, we were kind of ad hoc managing marketing. We've brought on a marketing professional recently, and she has taken on all of our communication efforts, which has been incredible because that's really her lane, her area of expertise. She has taught us so much in just a year working with her. And then we have an operations assistant who is a contract employee and he takes on sort of that office manager role, Nolan Ehlers, and he's also a percussionist. So he can kind of be fluid and support Colin and his needs in the studio, and then support me and the other staff members with administrative responsibilities that need support. So we have a pretty solid team, really, really stacked, a lot of talented people. We're very fortunate, but I will say, it took 20 years to get to this point. Sometimes in the past, like building up the staff was very reactive, like, oh my gosh, we're in over our heads. We need somebody to help us, like right now. And less of the planning it out and thinking long term, like, what do we need? What do we need on the staff support side? And therefore, this, experimental phase we're in now with hiring consultants and things like that is kind of a way for us to slow down, think about the areas of the organization that need support, and we're still tweaking it to this day.
Jenny had asked a really good question that's based on that as well, which was how did you prioritize as you were building the team, which roles to hire?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of looking at what the ensemble members are still doing. That's an analysis that's ongoing. But kind of figuring out what was stalling out if they went on tour. That's a big one. Like if they're not physically present, was there anything that couldn't be done? Like sometimes we would hit literal roadblock, like, oh, only David knows that, or only Sean. So part of the reason why my position evolved from managing director to general manager is so that I could take on more of a leadership responsibility and understand more big picture what was going on. And if they were ever unavailable, I would have at least enough knowledge for us to keep moving forward. Um, and we're still like forensically dissecting some of the ensemble members' administrative roles and figuring out what staff can take on and take away from them. And then we're building positions around that, if that makes sense.
Love to encourage everybody to speak up. You're welcome to come off camera and turn off your mute and ask some more questions. Um, I've been a small ensemble member before, and there's the differences. A lot of people wonder about LLC versus nonprofit and which way they should go. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think 20 years ago, when Third Coast was looking around and trying to figure out which way to go, there were a lot of small nonprofits forming, and that was the direction they headed. And I think it made a lot of sense for them because the being a contemporary music ensemble and commissioning new music, there's so many opportunities that can only be untapped or tapped into if you're a nonprofit, if you have that 501(c)(3) status and can apply for grants. And that just seemed to make a whole lot of sense for them. Um, I don't know much about LLC. I have to be honest. I kind of grew up and was born and bred in this nonprofit model. And so that's what I know the best. And I don't really have much experience otherwise. And it's interesting, like actually a string quartet and I were chatting yesterday because they're an LLC now and they want to go nonprofit. And so I was kind of telling them how we organize so that they can think about whether that's something they want to pursue. But we've been able to really slowly and carefully build in this nonprofit model, just every year working a little bit harder to get that budget number up, that bottom line up. And with a great board behind us, we've been able to do it. So I think
Yeah.
that's been really nice having that support system that a nonprofit provides.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've noticed that musicians are scared to go the nonprofit route because they're worried about their artistry um, being like their artistic power being overwhelmed by a board or having these decisions made for them by a board.
Yeah.
And, that's it's an interesting thing to hear what people think about boards. So maybe if you don't mind commenting on that, I mean, how did you grow your board to be so supportive? Yeah, I think that's a really important thing for people to know who are maybe debating that.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of it for Third Coast, I have to say, is luck. I think they picked some people early on, not me, well, me, maybe me, but I'm still here. So that says something, right? Like I was on their first board and I'm still here. Our board president, who went to Northwestern and was the same age roughly as all of us, he was on the first board of directors. He signed that 501(c)(3) paper with me. He's the board president. He has never not been on the board. I think that's very unusual. So early on, there was some luck involved with finding people who were extremely dedicated, love percussion music, love contemporary music, didn't necessarily have like a high powered job or anything like that, but just really believed in what the artists were striving towards and supported that, and also had some really practical advice, like a Talbert, who's our board president. He was like, "Oh, so you guys have a press kit, right?" And they were like, "I don't know what that is." And so he's like, "Okay, I'm going to show you what that is." And that was how they had their first press kit, first EP, like all of those things. Um, so he kind of like got them started off on this trajectory of like thinking about marketing and brand and how you present yourselves to others and that sort of thing. So just having people around that were, and me being in the presenting world, like I had practical advice for them early on. They didn't need, of course they wanted to raise money, but like just getting all of these ducks in a row early on, that's what the board members really did. And then over the years, it's grown, just like people who started coming to concerts and were becoming fans and wanted to donate and then wanted to be more involved. The ensemble is really smart about tracking who those people were and bringing them into the fold at various points. So some people came about that way. And now that we're in our 20th year and, little more established, we do have a governance committee on the board, and they are responsible for, seeking out potential board members. Some people join organically, but some people, we think we need somebody with expertise in a certain area, like a lawyer. They'll help us like work the connections amongst the board and ensemble and donor base that we have to see who might be a good fit. And something that we've started doing in the past few years as well is we have several board committees, and we'll invite people who are interested in joining the board to serve on a committee just to see how they're fitting, what they bring to the table, just to be a little more like slow burn into like integrating them into the full board. And that has really served us well when we're trying to find the right people to join. So, and we have now gotten a little bit more sophisticated about the fundraising potential of the board and what they bring to the table. But it really, it's always been a thing, but now it's a little bit more of a codified thing.
Yeah.
It took a while to get there.
So before you signed those 501(c)(3) papers, what was that like for the group? How are they funding their efforts? How is that working? I just think it's always interesting to hear that moment because when an early ensemble are like, well, it's so great. There's all these donors out there apparently, or this, but I can't deal with that. So it'd be great to hear what that was like in the early stages.
Yes. So I think around that time, the ensemble was part-time. Third Coast Percussion was a part-time venture for them. It wasn't their full-time job. So they had each ensemble member had other performance opportunities that they were pursuing or teaching. Some of them held faculty positions in higher ed and that sort of thing. So it was a tentative baby step while they all had safety nets with other things that they were doing in their career. And Third Coast would tour, maybe 2 or 3 times a year in a limited way that worked with their schedules and all of those other things. And they were able to kind of carve out the time for those administrative duties that they were going to be taking on and that kind of thing. Um, but it took a few years after that for them to feel like, okay, we're going to push this all the way. We're ready to go full time. Everybody committed to quitting their other jobs, and going all in. But it wasn't right away. It took a few years after becoming a nonprofit before they were ready to go full time.
That's a really scary step.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you have any advice for people who are maybe contemplating that.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a personal decision. There's been one personnel change in the four ensemble members in 20 years, and that happened right before this. I think somebody, the person who is no longer with the group, it wasn't quite for them to do what everyone was heading towards.
Mhm.
And that's okay, like it is what it is. And the ones who were willing to stay, and the new person who came in, Sean was the one who came in about 10 years ago. He's the newest member. He said, I really believe in this. This is what I want to do. And he did end up quitting his tenure track professorship to join Third Coast. And yeah, I think it wouldn't have been possible without the people around them, the safety net again of the board, and they had started making some pretty significant connections. And I think around this time as well, they were able to land their first residency, which is at Notre Dame University, which was a huge game changer too. So, with all of their efforts working towards this very important financial anchor of a residency, that helped everyone swing together in that direction.
Yeah,
um,
that's great.
Otherwise, it would have been I think it might have been a lot more challenging. I couldn't say because what happened happened, but I think having, that financial stability for residency was really helpful at that point.
Yeah. Chris, from Chamber Music Hawaii, I don't know if you want to come off, you know, get on camera and ask your question, but he's asking, how do you approach organizing your annual fund? Does the board serve as the primary fundraisers or someone on staff or a musician?
Yes, so that is a collaborative effort between Robert Dillon, our development director slash ensemble member, and Rebecca McDaniel, our development manager. Um, they have a wonderful committee of board members, the development committee. that backs them in all of their efforts. We recently started doing a fall benefit. It's not a gala, it's not a full-blown gala yet, but that's relatively new. About 3 or 4 years ago, we started mounting a fundraising event of that caliber, and that we have a special guest come in every year now. This year it was Twyla Tharp, which was insane. Um, but
Wow.
that kind of took things to a new level. And they're a little bit more focused on that event in addition to like the annual campaigns that we do at the end of the year always. That hasn't changed. But also building this circle of donors in Chicago, the Chicago Circle. That's something that a development consultant worked with Rob and Rebecca to build. Um, we had a strategic plan about 5 or 6 years ago where building a stronger presence in Chicago was one of the goals. And so building a stronger donor base in Chicago became very important. It's actually been really postponed for them because they went on tour so often that sometimes they would go a couple years without playing any of their major touring programs in Chicago. So that's become a bigger focus, and therefore Chicago fundraising has also become a bigger focus. So it's kind of a newer initiative that we're doing, and it has really helped, grow our individual donor base. And then the major giving, like major gifts from bigger donors, is something that Rob is continuously working on. So Rob from the ensemble, one of the musicians, that's his baby. He works really hard and he gets advice from the fundraising committee and a consultant that we've been working with to secure some of those major gifts. I hope that answered the question, but that's how we structure that side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that's hard for small ensembles, or yeah, honestly any size, is that major gift part of annual fundraising, because maybe people are stuck in this certain level and they don't know how to get higher, and maybe they haven't hired staff yet. So it's interesting when people are growing and trying to figure out how to get to that next step, because it is, I talk with members all the time who just are like, oh, this guy gave me $200,000, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm a new presenter and this just happened. And, right off the bat. And so it is very interesting to think about annual fund and major gifts and how different they are. So yeah. Um, Susan, I see that you were asking about the annual report.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So a few years ago, one of our board members said, "Where's your annual report? You don't put out an annual report." And so we said, "Oh, yes, that's true. We don't do that." So we've started putting together an annual report that we share with donors, the community at large, audience members. And it's been a really great exercise for us to come together as a team and form a narrative about what we did the last year, like, and where we're headed next. It's just one of those like rare opportunities because we're all so busy to think about like what we want to present, both like what our programs are, our financial outlook, all of those things. And we had I keep referring to this development consultant. Bill is his name. He's local to Chicago, and he helped shape the outline of the first annual report, and that's something that we've replicated year after year for the past, I think, 3 or 4 years now. So it's been good for us internally, really kind of rallies us around the way that we want to present ourselves to the wider community. And I think our donors really appreciate having that as well. It really shows them what their dollars are supporting. Um, and one thing that we've put in print, in our report is that we want to fund the artists' salaries. Like we want them to be supported and, able to do this work and also live a healthy life. And that's something that we've actually woven into the narrative of our last couple of annual reports. And another thing we did this year was, or for the 20th anniversary, is we mounted a campaign that we wanted to raise $1 million in 2 years. That's the first time we've done anything like this, where we've put a number out there to try to raise towards. And that's been great. That's really galvanized a lot of our supporters. Some people are giving above what they normally would because we've put this goal out there, and it's been fantastic. Really amazing to see the results from this campaign. Our first, go around with something like that.
Any questions hanging out? Jenny.
Thank you. Thanks for answering so many of our questions already, Reba. I had another question sort of about administrative teams and growing those. And I'm curious, when an ensemble's taking the plunge to hire administrative staff in-house, are there pieces that that need to be considered that sometimes are overlooked? I'm thinking, maybe in the realms of budgeting or digital infrastructure or operational infrastructure. What are the sort of the key items that like maybe you've learned along the way, maybe the hard way, or are pitfalls that you've heard from others?
Yeah, I think one thing that happened in the past was, oh, we're going to hire a new staff member and this is their salary, but not thinking plus their taxes, the employment tax that goes with that, benefits, all of those things. So it's not just hiring someone at X salary, it's also quite a big investment, like beyond that, to support another team member. And Third Coast Percussion also offers benefits like health insurance for all employees, a 501 501c3 401k match, like a or a percentage contribution every year. So, that's not something that came out lightly. And it's like, oh, if we're going to grow our team and add more positions, we have to think about all those other financial implications. It's not just a salary, it's much more than that. So, didn't like sink anything, but it certainly was a shock when, we realized it's not just a salary figure. Um, and I think that Third Coast Percussion's been pretty good about this, but yes, you're right. Like digital and like hardware, like my laptop that I'm looking at right now belongs to Third Coast Percussion. Trying to make sure that the team is resourced with the technology that they need. That's something that we have to factor into our budget and long-term planning. Do we have enough laptops for everybody, and for the touring needs and everything else? um, but we do invest in, like, ever since COVID, we've been more remote than ever. And so just making sure we have like all of the tools that make communication easy and efficient. That's been an investment financially too, like making sure we have paid Zoom accounts and all of these things. So yeah.
I like Chris's comment in the chat, that they think about the board goals for the organization, but not as much from the musicians in terms of organizational goals, that it's usually just artistic. And I think that's fair. I mean, when you're a musician, you're just like, health insurance?
Yeah.
Question mark. So, yeah, just, yeah, I really like that comment. Just wanted to throw that in there.
And that didn't happen day one. Like when they became full-time employees, they did not have employee sponsored health insurance yet. It took a few years of thought and planning and thinking, what does this investment mean? And knowing that when you get older, it gets more expensive, like that kind of thing, that they had to stop and think really hard about when they could implement that into the picture. So it wasn't immediately.
Amy, I see you're on video. It'd be great to hear from you.
I think my question is, when is it time to start getting administrative staff? Like at what point? Because right now we do everything in-house and just kind of divvy out assignments, but when is it the point where you do need to start hiring out?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this earlier, like the ensemble, I asked for a couple of them to give some input before I came on today, and they said that um, they wish they hadn't been so reactive and waited until they were drowning in responsibilities. Um, and I think they were, it was young, they were young, it was early on in their careers and they didn't really know what was possible yet. But I think there is a pain point moment where it's like, I know that if I had support, I could do so much more. And that was a moment when they all decided we've got to find some help because things were stalling out. Um, Things were not getting done, things were having to wait or be postponed. And everyone agreed, like, we wish that wasn't the case anymore. And we need to think about where we can get support and what the position might look like that would enable things to keep moving without us. And this is something we're working on to this day because we're just lucky that the ensemble is so invested in their administrative duties. It's really great and they care so much and they know that all of the work that they're doing feeds into the organization's health and financial health. But sometimes I'm like, I think I think we can do this so that you don't have to. It's still a struggle to this day sometimes to like coax things away from them. I'm just speaking from my personal experience. It's hard when you've done everything yourself for so long to let go of some of those things. And it's not a trust issue, it's just you know, caring so much and like this is their life and their livelihood and everything has been poured into this project. So sometimes I'm noticing like I have to be the one as the staff member who's like, I think we've got this. You can go rehearse, go tour, go do what you need to do. Like we've got this for you. So that's something we're still working on. But I guess it must be different for everybody. Like when you feel like you've hit the moment where you're in too deep or you need that support.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
feel like
and that's the tricky
uh,
part. Like we're trying to figure that out. What financially is smart, and there's so many decisions to be made. But yes, sometimes I think I just want to play. I want to play my
Sure.
instrument and not worry about all the other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that like some other ensembles out there have contacted me or the TCP team and said, "Hey, we're thinking of starting our first admin position. We don't know where to start." And we just, as their colleagues, we just get on the phone with them and be like, "What do you think you need?" And here's how we did it. How do we, what kinds of non-negotiables are there? Do you need somebody in person? Can they be remote? Like that sort of thing, and help them sort out what they need. I think like asking your colleagues for advice and help is totally valid, and a lot of people would be willing to help. Um, yeah, I helped somebody put together their first job description because they didn't know what to put in it, like that kind of stuff. And also like another thing that's worked for us is trying on a short-term basis with a contractor to see how it's going, having somebody else do it, and then there's no obligation for it to continue if it's not working. So that's another
That's a
thing.
great idea. Just do a contract to get some projects going and taken care of and see how it works. Great idea.
Yeah, we're doing, to an extent, we're doing that right now with our operations assistant position. We're not quite sure what we need, but we have someone great who is capable of doing more. And so we grow at that a little bit more um, every few months and see how it's going and that kind of thing. So that's working really well for us right now.
Chris wrote in the chat again. Um, is there What's the fee income structure for the programs listed on TCP site? And are they fueled by contributed, or how do you allocate funds for those programs?
Okay. I think he's talking about the like the touring programs that we book for touring.
Yeah, he put the link
Yes.
in
Okay.
the
Okay.
chat. Yeah, education and engagement.
Mhm. So interestingly, we this is like probably something that was started way before my time, like figuring out what Third Coast Percussion's market value is, like what our fee structure could be, like what it costs for the ensemble to show up and play something, and factoring in like what it took to get to that moment, because that's entirely among the personnel that we have here at Third Coast, like getting on the phone and chatting with somebody about what they're looking for, um, putting together the promotional materials for those programs, uh, you know, me like sorting out budgets and like figuring out what they can, what they can afford to pay us and what we'll do it for. And then Sean taking it on from there and advancing like the technical details and the production details. Do they need to travel, like all that kind of stuff? So we have a very elaborate fee structure for all the programs that we offer. It's changes all the time because things change. We kind of feel out what we feel like people are able to afford, and then what we need to actually make it happen. So we have a local fee structure, we have a touring international versus touring nationally, like what our different price points are. But forever and always, it incorporates all of the administrative work that it takes from our team to get that done. So, like I said earlier, we're not working with an agency or an outside firm. Everything is happening internally. And so, we think about what our budget goals are. We have a very specific goal in mind every fiscal year of what we're trying to make from touring and education engagements. And we have to factor all that and balance it with what the market looks like, or if it's, the middle of a pandemic, or if everyone's, struggling for a reason that we can't predict, or, like what we're going through now with the NEA, like a lot of our presenters are funded by the NEA, and like just kind of like riding those waves, those ebbs and flows of what's happening in the world, while also trying to make sure that we're hitting all of our targets. So we have our ideal numbers, and then we always are willing to kind of expand and contract based on what's happening out there.
You said it. What's going on right now?
Wait, did I?
Yeah, no, with the NEA, I think there's a lot of uncertainty right now, especially from, I mean, yeah, organizations like yours that have so much going on. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about just quickly about what you're doing to kind of get through this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for us, we are very grateful that we have the staff and the team that we have right now, because when something catastrophic happens, like we find out that our gift has been revoked or whatever, we had the people around us who could investigate, find out more, like take some time out of their day to understand it better. And then we were, with any example, like our development manager was able to dedicate some time to figure out if we could actually get the money or not. So that was very helpful. But we realized that not everyone's in that same position. So we're, doing whatever we can to like listen to others' experiences and know what the wider implications are, and to think how we can use our position as a, you know, pretty well-known organization to speak up or to advocate. We don't, that's something that we would like to do more of. Time is limited, but I think we're showing up for those like industry-wide conversations, and seeing if there's more that we can do and more that we can communicate to our fan base that they can do. So that's something that's really top of mind right now for us. We don't have, and we're also holding a little bit more of a conservative stance for ourselves for next fiscal year, just like knowing that everyone's kind of going through this together right now.
Yeah.
We're excited to be ambitious. We're always ambitious, but we recognize that it's probably the prudent thing to be a little bit more like stayed and settled next season and not try to go for broke. So
Completely understand. Thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful conversation, hearing about the ins and outs of what you do and how you operate. I just wanted to ask if anybody has any last questions. Otherwise, we're going to maybe wrap up. Any last questions? Okay. Well, next week we have an event, just member focused, a forum about careers and what's next, and just getting advice from each other and having a conversation with each other. So it'll be member led. We'll flow wherever we go, talking about careers. And I think this is great for people who maybe are mid career and thinking, okay, I'm pretty, you know, stable right now. Do I want to do something to really like, you know, unsettling and go for it? These moments, like kind of what you were talking about, Reba, about committing, quitting the jobs, focusing on this one thing. So things like that. We'll talk about all of that next week. So I hope to see you there. And yeah, just thank you, Reba. Thank you for taking the time.
it was so much
And
fun. Thank
yeah.
you. I really appreciate it. And please be in touch if anyone wants to talk more. Reba at thirdcoastpercussion.com.